All right, welcome to this edition of the Running Coaches Connection. This time we have a really cool scenario here. We have a former high school alum that with Coach Rowe and I, that we all were Pioneer grads. He is now the head sprints, hurdles, and relays coach at Stanford University. His name is Gabe Sanders. Coach, we appreciate you coming on board.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys having me, and I'm really happy we can have 3 generations of Pi High back in the same room.
It's pretty unique, and then obviously I'm Takashi Gould, the boys' head coach for cross country and track and field at Skyline High School. With me is also Coach Rowe, girls' head coach in track and cross country at Skyline, and with us also is Dave Lustig, girls' head coach of cross and track at Wyandotte. So yeah, Gabe, it's pretty sweet that you kind of made this amazing ascension, through to get to where you are at Stanford. I feel like it was only a couple of years ago, not that long ago, when I was in high school, and you were like, "Hey, have you looked at U of M? Hey, you should think about these things when you're looking at school." And I just remember bumping into you here and there, and you just kind of flew through the ranks real quickly in the astronomical rate. Yeah, so if you could touch up a little bit, obviously I know your background, but maybe to kind of get everyone else all caught up with, how did you first get involved with the sport, and how did you get here?
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but giggle when you say this massive ascension in the coaching ranks, but I guess relative to my age, it's gone pretty well so far. My background just, I don't know if you want to start from 0 BC or anything like that, but I guess rounding it back to just being a Pioneer guy, for me, it just was the love of track and field in high school. And personally, the track program and the track coach there at Pioneer was one of the first experiences being on a team where I felt that I had value, and I was given value, with recognition of work ethic, talent between teammates, coaches alike, and I loved it. And then I went on to, and I was honestly, to be honest, a mediocre jumper. I was a long jumper. I was probably a high 21 guy. I made the state meet, which is all well and good, and I ended up being a recruited walk-on at the University of Michigan, and that's where really my whole love for coaching came in, but it was not the goal going there. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a phys ed teacher, maybe get into sport agency, sports marketing, journalism, something along those lines, sport law and contract management. I didn't know, but I did know that I loved track. And my tagline, I like to say to a lot of people, if I could have double majored in track and field and sport management, I would have graduated cum laude. My GPA my real GPA definitely suffered a little bit, but my actual, track GPA was probably a 5.0 on a 4 scale. And that was actually a result of, I was always getting hurt for one reason or the other. Going into my freshman year, long story short, had bone spurs in my ankle, had surgery, was out freshman year. Sophomore year, had an emergency appendectomy late in the fall, and that knocked me out for quite a bit. And then finally, junior year, I actually made the inter-squad meet in early December. That was an achievement for me. And wouldn't you know it, on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th attempt in the long jump, boom, 2nd-degree tear in my hamstring. So, I'm laying there in the sand, and all my mind wants to do is just shout out and drop the biggest F-bomb you can believe, and all that comes out is a very gentle, well, that's it. And over the weekend, I did some soul searching, and I was just 3-strike rule. I can't do this anymore. And I went to the coaching staff and said, look, take my name off the roster. I don't deserve the spot. Give it to another walk-on, but I want to stay with the team and help out however I can. Make me a water boy. I don't care, manager, whatever you want me to do. And they said, Gabe, we'd love to have you. And that's really how it really started. And so I became a student manager officially at Michigan my junior year. And funny thing, over time, I was actually allowed to start, in a sense, coaching and working with the guys on the team, guys that I was recruited with and whatnot. And one reason was I found myself picking up on things because the years leading up to that, as I said, I was studying track and field in my spare time. I was looking up biomechanics and physiology and training theory and all these different things related to training and track and field and physiology. Granted, I was in the school of kinesiology anyway, and I didn't realize I was already starting my pedigree. So over time, even the coaching staff said, oh, maybe there's something to this. So I would be given groups, with the strict directions, bear in mind, but I was given groups to work out with on a almost daily basis, which was pretty neat. And I was actually rewarded my senior year with the actual title of undergraduate assistant coach and administrative assistant of the track team, which was pretty cool. And they also gave me the title of, head meet manager at the Big Ten Indoor Championships in 2004, which was pretty cool as well. And just kind of that's where it really, really started. And I didn't realize that's what I still wanted to do in full time until really, I want to say, going into my senior year, it was probably in an October session, and it was on a Friday. And at the time, the field events coach who I worked directly under was traveling with the cross-country team. He was just joining the program, and he wanted to kind of get more involved with the overall program. So I was given the entire group by myself to oversee and train that day, which is crazy as an undergraduate. Like I said, I'm training guys that I was recruited with, that I helped recruit, whatnot. And so I took them through a circuit session and then directed them down to the weight room. And then the sprinters came in, and I did the same circuit with them as I believe the sprint coach that weekend went on a recruiting weekend. So I worked with them as well. So after the circuit was done, I went down to the weight room with them and helped the strength staff, with the last guy in there, last guy standing. And as I'm leaving the weight room, I had driven to practice that day for some reason, and I'll never forget the sun seems to start to set, and I'll never forget walking up to my car and stopping and just laughing because I can see my glare in the mirror. And I have this ear-to-ear grin I didn't even know I had. And I just laugh at myself when I realize this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be a track coach. I feel like it's my calling. I am lucky enough to have that moment in my life where I feel like I found my calling. So I ran with it, and fast forward, the coaching staff helped connect me to get my first job at Williams College in Western Massachusetts, small Division III school in Western Mass, liberal arts, but top-rated liberal arts school in the country and top-rated in Division III. And I was there for 2 years, and it went well. I was the jumps coach there, and in 2 years, we actually won a Division III national championship. The feather in my cap was 21 out of 42 points came from my event area, which was pretty awesome. Had runner-up in the triple, runner-up in the long jump, fourth place in the long jump. Had a male that get fourth place, and it was just a great experience. And, from there, I got a phone call from Colgate University after my second year to, come back into the Division I ranks, and they were kind of a lower-tier mid-major program, but I wanted to get back into Division I. And, they were in a situation where they're at the bottom of the barrel in the Patriot League, but I knew the talent was there, and it was one of those things where, it's not a University of Michigan, it's not, a Division III national power, but you still have to work hard and do the best that you can at the level that you're at. So that was the mentality, and it was like, hey, let's get in the top half of the league, and, I won't, again, bore you with a long synopsis of how the year went, but needless to say, we took fourth at the indoor championships. We scored 54 points when we were only returning 6. We had over a dozen guys score. We only had one guy returning scoring, and then I was lucky enough that it was recognized by Boston University, and I got the call there to kind of get the sprints program going, and I was at BU for 7 years. And it seems like that's a really rare thing to say if you're there at a certain place for more than 3 years, which I've found. I didn't even realize it. But I was in a really good situation there. Before I got there, the women's school record, I believe, was 3:53 in the 4x4, and before I left, it was 3:38. On the men's side, before I got there, the year before, they had run 3:22. By the time I left, they were the area record holders at 3:08. We just got better, and a lot of it for me over time wasn't just like the actual training, but was connecting with the athletes at every single level. even when I got to Williams College, I had buddies at the University of Michigan ask me, so what's it like working with D3 kids? And, without even thinking, without hesitation, I said, it's no different. It's absolutely no different, because you always work to be competitive at the level that you're at, and you try to exceed those expectations. And that's what we did at Williams. That's what we did at Colgate. That's what we did at BU. And now that's what we're doing here at Stanford. Relatively speaking, you could say we're just trying to do the same thing that you do anywhere else, is be the best possible version of yourself here. At Stanford, that expectation is getting on the national podium and eventually a national championship. At Colgate University, that's trying to be a league finalist, and that's fine. You be competitive at the level that you're at, and I'd like to think the same with the high school ranks. Whether that's a league championship, district championship, getting to the state level, you're only a competitor against yourself, and you try and beat yourself every single day and every single season, every single year. And, I got that from some of my big influences, like my mentors at Michigan, who at the time were Ricky DeLigny starting out, David Kaiser after him, Ron Warhurst, the legendary head coach of the University of Michigan. And all of my mentors have one big thing in common, is they just know how to connect with athletes. They're really well book learned. They know the ins and outs of training theory and whatnot, but they know how to manipulate all that to the context of the athlete and the teams that they're in. And I think that's always been my strength as a coach, is just being able to connect with the athlete on a personal and empathetic level more than anything. So, I've been ranting on for I don't know how long, but that's really a kind of a synopsis of kind of how I got to Stanford. And I got, as far as how I got to Stanford, a lot of it was just showing consistency over time and showing improvement over time. You'd think, I didn't have a Division I All-American in my time at Boston University, but somehow I was picked out of anybody that they wanted. And my understanding was a big part of it was, hey, you've shown, that you can get it done at a high level, at a national level, at a mid-major school with high academic standards, and you're consistent. You've been at the same place for 7 years, so you're a loyal, consistent guy, and that's what we want. And, I could go into more of, a few things, but one thing that was really nice, because I even asked our head coach here, I said, how do you land on me? And he said the things I just said before, but one big thing was, he did a lot of cold calls about me to some of his colleagues, many of his colleagues actually, and every single person he said had a different good thing to say about me, whether it was as a coach, as a person, personally, just, saying nice things about me, how I treat the athletes. And it's just good to know that, doing it the right way pays dividends, I'd like to think. Just be a good person, try and work hard on your craft, treat people well, and just spread love and enjoy the people that you work with. It's not, networking can be just as simple as being a good person when you interact with people, and it can kind of stop there. So yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable that I'm here at the University of Stanford University, and I'm just outside of my first decade professionally of this, but I'm really proud of the work that I've done and the people that I've worked with, and I hope that I get a few more decades here.
No, you touched on so much, and that's a lot of awesome stories. It's neat to know, like you're talking about the moment that you knew, hey, this is why I wanted to get into coaching, and the story leading up to it, because of it's almost like the injuries kind of turned into inquiries, about the sport and about the human body, and those puzzles and the pieces were already there, and this big domino effect,
Yeah.
And that's really cool and unique, and that's really an interesting story. It's not like, hey, I was just chilling and I got a call one day and that was that. It was you were already involved in it. And I got to ask real quick, what was that like? As an undergrad, now you're working with your friends, your roommates, teammates, because you said you went into a program where a lot of times a kid gets a couple of injuries, and it's not being consistent for him or her, and then a lot of times kids are just like, you know what, I'm done. I just want to focus on being a student, and I'm out.
Well, I don't want to use the term I think it was a unique situation for me. Just me personally, I just love track. I love the sport. I love track. I love running fast, or at least trying to run fast. I love attempting to jump far. I love the camaraderie of the environment that I was in. And I felt, to me I personally felt that was a part of my identity. And I'd like to think a lot of student athletes can relate, but it was a very, very personal thing for me in my time there at Michigan. So it was easy for me, even though I was injured, to say, look, I still want to contribute to this. And I don't think that is normal, to be honest. I think it's very easy to say, look, I just want to be a student. I want to get my degree. I want to go into the workforce. And I didn't realize, I didn't initially go into it saying, like, I want to get into the workforce of coaching, but I just went into it as, I love this experience. I love this environment. I love these people, and I want to be a part of it. And, I was really motivated, and I think, I think that played well into me being able to interact with my friends and teammates on the team at the level I did. And it was kind of a slow transition, and it also helped that even Ron Warhurst, in the fourth year or last year when it was announced I was undergraduate assistant, he said I'm paraphrasing, he used a few more select words, but he said he's no one's freaking gopher. All right, let's understand this right now. He's nobody's gopher. All right, he's one of us, and he kind of pointed to the rest of the coaching staff, and that's how he's going to be treated because he's earned it. And again, a few more select words, but I mean that was really appreciated on Ron Warhurst's part to help establish that tone, that it came from the top down. It wasn't as if I was trying to be something that I quote unquote wasn't. And I also treated all my guys with respect. There was an understanding of like, hey, like I'm not your supervisor. I'm not in charge of you. I'm trying to help you get better. So there's that mutual understanding. And I think that's helped me in my career is, look, I am your supervisor. I am your superior, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to help you get better as a person, as an athlete, as, a whole being. So I think that really helped play into my time and being able to transition into that role. And as the years went on, I got older, the group got younger with new recruits and whatnot, so that helped as well.
So you've been coaching, literally from coast to coast, and just circumstances are just different, northeast to the south and all that. How have you had to adjust your approach to coaching?
Well, I try and I don't think I've necessarily adjusted my approach to coaching. I think it's just you adjust to the context of your situation. For me, like going in from the Midwest to the East Coast, back out to the West. I mean, obviously, weather is a big challenge. But for me, I fall back to fundamental themes of training. So, like, some people may have heard of the biomotor areas, speed, strength, suppleness, skill, coordination, stamina, things of that nature. Like it all comes back to those primary themes, okay? And it's just a simple way of how can I address each of those areas based on my context. I love hills. I had a really good hill when I was at Williams College. I didn't have a great hill at Colgate University, so I had to make an adjustment with how often I would get on this particular hill at Colgate. When I was at Boston, I had a really great hill, but it was concrete, so I had to be careful about the volume that I did there. Here at Stanford, I'm still searching for a good hill to use. If I wanted to use a hill for short acceleration and I can't find a good one, then I'm going to use sleds instead. That's a big part of it. If I don't have sleds, but I can find a hill in my situation, that's what I'm going to use. One of the major differences for me, from a specificity standpoint, the intermediate hurdlers, we can do a lot more specific work year-round, obviously because there's no snow, so I can do much more work late into the fall, early in the winter, even throughout the indoor season. I can do a few more like specific speed special endurance runs here on the West Coast that I couldn't necessarily do on the East Coast, or I wouldn't want to do on an indoor track. I'll never negative recruit the East or the Midwest because of weather, because I was in it. but there is such thing as an optimal situation for sure. So there's definitely an optimal situation. So it's much better that I'm able to get on grass year-round if I'd like to versus having to be indoors on concrete or, a synthesized surface or something like that. So I guess to get to the point of your answer, I don't think my general philosophy has changed much, just how I adjust to certain circumstances has.
Right. Because I know you're in my dream scenario, man, just being outside all the time.
Yeah.
We're doing stuff now, and I'm just planning for when it's coming. It's like it's coming soon.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I know. I lived it.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah.
Even again, if you want to make adjustments to your situation, like if you're a high school coach, like one example, like, if I want to do a long speed endurance session and I want to do 4 times 150, like all out with 12 minutes recovery. If you're a high school coach during the indoor season, you probably can't do that because your high school hall is probably, 50 to 80 meters at best. So you can't do that. And even if it's 80 meters long, you can't run 80 meters because they're going to run into a locker. But if you want to get the same training effect, why don't you do a stack run? A stack run can involve, so instead of the, 150s, why don't you do 5 times 50 with short recovery all out? You're going to get almost the same training effect and a little bit more acceleration work, like acceleration mechanic work off of that versus thinking, I can't do 150, so we're just not going to do them. If you want to do some extra Olympic lifting or multi-jumps, if you want to get off your legs, it's just adjusting to the context of your situation and just being creative. At the end of the day, that's the beauty. Some of the best training setups have come out of just simple circumstance. And it's like, that actually works really well, because a lot of people I've spoken to about this, they have fallen into the trap of, okay, we can get outside, so we need to do all this long work now that we can get on the track. Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
So it'd be very easy for me out here to just do, tempo all the time year round, on the track, because I can get on the track and do all this speed work all the time. Well, no, if it doesn't fit into the training plan, just don't do it. So if you want to do, stair work in the high school stairs, do that. You can get a lot of power work off of that. So, it takes learning about the sport, learning about the human body, and making adjustments. Mm-hmm. But yes, it is a dream scenario.
Yeah, that's about to say. Let's be real though. It's nice. I mean, does it even rain out there? It's just sunshine and rainbows and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 75, sunny, and rainbows every day.
Yeah. Just joy.
Yeah. When I moved out here initially, I made the permanent move in January, and I'll never forget, the plane took off in Boston at 7:30 a.m., and it was 8 degrees. Not wind chill, 8 degrees. And the next day here in Palo Alto, to the locals, it was miserable at 52 and rain. When I say literally, they were walking around like the rapture was coming. This is awful. And I can do miserable 8 days out of the week. That's fine by me.
Yeah, 52 is T-shirt weather, man.
So, Coach, you've moved up. You've taken a lot of nice positions. You've gone from D1 at U of M. You went to Williams D3, back to D1 again a couple of times, and now in Stanford. So, you talked about really having a great student-athlete relationship, being empathetic to what those guys are going through and those girls are going through. So, how difficult has it been, and what challenges have you dealt with, leading some of these guys and girls that you've worked with daily at these different schools, just as you progress your own career and your own love for coaching?
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Well, I think, again, for me, it starts with empathy and communication, number one. Everywhere I've been, I take the first yearly meeting very, very, very seriously. And when I say seriously, it's not that I'm just trying to do a checklist of, okay, we got to talk about the team rules, we got to talk about daily operation, we got to talk about that. That's just a checkbox. You do that, you absolutely do that. But for me, growing the relationship means making sure that they feel like they're a part of the process, in that they're informed of what's going on. When I was at Boston, Colgate, Williams, it was very big to me to have them understand where I was coming from, the ins and outs of what I do, why I do it, my general goals in training and for all the athletes, and most importantly, what my expectations for this program are. And not just, from a time or measurement standpoint, but how you carry yourself, how you act, how you treat each other, and how I intend to treat you. And I think for me, it was a very unique situation coming into Stanford, in that this was the first job that I took where they were already, into week, I want to say 4 or 5 of training when I got to campus, because I was a late hire. I didn't get the call until probably the end of this week last year, and by the time I got out here, they had already been training remotely on their own with the training plan of the coach previous to me. So it was going to be definitely a real shift in gears, and I think the best thing that I did this year was I had a team meeting with all the sprinters, and I literally printed out my general philosophy. I printed out talking about the buyer motor concepts. I printed out sample training weeks. I printed out the definitions of speed, acceleration, max speed. I printed out the definitions of, what defines tempo and things of that nature. So they all physically in front of them had a concrete understanding of, okay, this is his mindset coming in, and this is why he does things the way he does. And relaying, again, my expectations are, we're going to work hard, but we're going to work smart, and this needs to be an open line of communication at the proper time. Sometimes there are certain questions you can ask me after practice or before practice, but we can't have that discussion in practice. But my door is always open. My expectation of how I treat them, for instance, something I said openly in the meeting, I will do the best that I can to treat you and make you feel like I respect you, and how I speak to you. For instance, me calling you the P word, I actually said it, but me calling you the P word doesn't do anybody any good. It's going to make you feel like crap, or it's going to make you pissed off at me, and it doesn't make me feel any better because I'm still going to be pissed off about whatever happens. So nobody wins, okay? So and if at any point, and I'm even quoting myself, I said this to the whole group, if at any point any of you feel disrespected or I'm out of line or in how I'm treating you or talking to you, I want you to call me on it, okay? Because I do see this as a relationship between the two of us, one-on-one, and I want to make sure that we have a good thing going and there's an open line of communication. But I immediately follow up with saying, that said, I will be critical of you. And critical does not have a negative connotation to it. Critical can mean, hey, you're not being a good teammate. Critical can be, this is the 3rd time in the last week and a half that you've been late to practice. Critical can be, this is the 2nd workout where you told me that you didn't have anything to eat today. You have to do better, okay? This is so I will be critical of you. I'll be very critical of you. Like, I can tell you, your body language is not telling me that you want to be here. Your body language is telling me that there's something else going on. So I will be critical of you, but that does not mean I'm going to be mean. It means I want you to be better. I want us to be better. I want this program to be better. And it cannot stop after that meeting. You have to show consistency with that message and just show that the athletes have value, that you're valuing who they are and what they're doing and why they're doing it. It can't just have a feeling of, I'm the coach, do what I say, let's get it done, go through the motions. Because the coach can go through the motions too. It's very easy to do that. But if you can do simple things like acknowledging each individual when they walk into the room, like, hey, Sally, hey, Susie, hey, Joe, hey, Frank, how you doing? Calling them by name. Just that little thing, there'll be a little chemical reaction in their brain when they hear their name and that individual acknowledgement. And over time, that's, I feel, how I've built a great rapport with every single athlete that I've ever worked with, is getting down to that personal level. Because that really came out of poor experiences I had as a young kid, with having poor experiences with coaches and not feeling like I was valued and feeling like I was talked down to and feeling like I was talked at or yelled at with, malice, with sheer malice, and I don't like being treated that way, and I don't want anyone to ever feel like I'm treating them that way. So that's a big reason I feel that I've been fairly successful with my rapport and the results on the track, is because those results are a byproduct of the relationship that's grown over time with that individual.
No, that's a great answer. I appreciate it, Coach. And like building up that rapport, though, I mean, so from going from Boston U to Stanford, I guess how do those guys react? When you sit down and tell them, hey, we built up this great rapport, but I'm moving on to something different. How does that conversation go with your group these groups that you've had over the years? How does that conversation go? How do those student athletes of yours react to this?
Believe it or not, Dave, it actually went really well, like way better than I ever expected. Like I thought they were all going to hate me, that I betrayed them, that this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, they were happy for me, believe it or not. I actually got a lot of congratulatory letters and handshakes and hugs. There was a lot of sadness. There was definitely a lot of sadness, especially with like the young kids that I had just recruited. But I think because I had such a good rapport with my student athletes, they understood the overall reasoning behind the decision. And at each stop that I had been to, from Williams going to Colgate, there was an understanding there. From Colgate going to Boston University, there was an understanding, and really just a happiness in just saying, look, we wish you luck, and Coach, you have fostered an environment where we can rely on each other. I'm like, you are not per se the figurehead. Like maybe I'm the guy that steers the ship, but there can be an autopilot based on everything that's been put into place. So for instance, like most recently at Boston University, I was very lucky that I had we had a wonderful, wonderful team chemistry with a good mix of, seniors, juniors, sophomores that kind of knew what the daily operations were, knew how to treat each other, because that was a big thing in my rapport, is how we treat each other as teammates, how we help lead each other. It's not just one person, the captain, that takes the lead, but anyone from the ground up can take the lead, and knowing that, hey, we're going to be okay even though this person isn't here, because we have each other and we have this great culture. And that's something I do the best I can to foster, that it's not just about me as the coach, but it's about us. It goes from me to we. That's our mentality. So that's one thing that I feel I've been very lucky with. So they don't feel like I'm just dismissing them, but hey, it's another chapter in my life. Just like when you graduate, you're going to be leaving me too, so it's not entirely the same, but it's kind of along the same spectrum. So, and the team ended up having a great year after I left. The person that came in did a very good job. The head coach did a very good job keeping things going. One oar does not make the ship. So, I think I was personally very lucky and did a good job fostering just a good team culture that wasn't reliant just on one single person.
Kind of like playing off of that a little bit here. Like when you're talking to kids, like in the say how about the recruiting process, right? Mm-hmm. As you're getting to know these kids, and like you can go on MileSplit, you can go on athletic.net, and it's just you can put the filter on and see the cutoffs of, all right, I'm looking at every male quarter miler under 47 seconds, 48 seconds, whatever, and it's just a big stat line. So it's like, what's your process, and like how do you get to know these kids, and if you could touch base on like the different levels of recruiting at the collegiate level. What do you college coaches look for besides just a stat line?
Well, to be quite honest and straightforward, that's the first thing we look at is the stat line. That's our job. At the end of the day is results. And there's no shame in saying that. Just that in any other sport, the bottom line is, what kind of results are we getting? After we get to that point, it is how are we getting to that point? At what cost? If there is a cost, are we getting to that point? So for me, one of my taglines in recruiting, and this is 100% true, is I want to work with good people, not just good athletes, okay? So depending on the level that the coach is at, whether they're at Division 3, 2, 1, whether they're in, the Western Athletic Conference or the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, they have certain parameters or goals that they have, whether it's at the conference level, the regional level, national level, whatever that is, and that's where they start. So first we have to know what we're looking for. So, for me, I have stat lines of what we need to kind of go with our program goals, but then beyond that, I have to see, and also academically, I have to see, what kind of character am I going to be working with. And there are little nuances that I look for, like, when I'm emailing a prospect, how long does it take him or her to get back to me? When I speak to them, how responsive are they to my energy? When I speak to them and I ask them what kind of questions that they have, are they going to ask me about training? Are they going to ask me about, program majors? Are they going to ask me about, travel schedule? Or is the first thing that they ask me is, well, how much scholarship money are you offering, Coach? Is the first thing that they ask me, do we have to go to study hall? There are certain red and yellow flags that just tip me off and say, I don't know if this is going to be a good fit. And that's really important. That's really, for me, that's really, really important, is what kind of rapport can we get from that. As far as advice to high school students, if you want to know if you can be recruited at a certain school, the easiest way to do it, almost every school in the country on the athletics website has the email of the coaching staff and all the coaching staff. And they should be pretty clear on which coach is the sprints coach. I don't know how many times I've seen kids email the distance coach asking about sprint times. And that means little things like that drive me up the wall. So you can find that. And what you need as far as the contents of that email, the bottom line contents of that email is, hi, this is my name. These are my events. These are the times that I've run. This is my GPA. These are my test scores. And here's a copy of my transcript and a copy of the test scores. And if you haven't taken any test scores, the ACT, SAT, what are the dates that you're going to do it? Okay? Those are some of the bottom line things we need to start with. And a pet peeve of mine is getting a 4-paragraph email and there's not a single number in it. That, to me, I get at least once a week of a 3 to 5 paragraph email that doesn't have a single number in it. And at the end it will ask, what are your scholarship standards, or what times do I need to run? Well, I can tell you that if you just tell me right off the bat. And when I see there's not a number, there's not a GPA, there's not a PR, there's not an SAT score, nothing, just I took 3rd at the county meet and I was all state and all region. That's all well and good, but in an objective sport like ours, we need some concrete numbers to start with. But then after that, let's start the dialogue. Simply at the different levels, it depends on the different levels that you're at. Like at Colgate University, could a person help us do better at the Patriot League and have a better showing there? At Williams College, can this person help us win a national championship at the Division III level? At Stanford University, can this person in time help us be a podium team at Division I and eventually a national championship team? In certain schools and maybe the Big Ten, especially the Big Ten, can this person help us win a Big Ten championship, or can this person help us at the Big Ten level? So that's really, you have to understand, what we're going for.
So I was taking notes on a lot of things you were saying here, and I'm sure other listeners are going to go back to about a couple minutes and go right through it all. Is it so for you? I guess in this particular case now at Stanford, and I don't know how much of this you can go into, but do you start with for you personally? Do you start with a humongous list of I got 50 kids, here's who I'm emailing, or is it hey, I got these kids, they're interested, I'm going to sift through all these emails? How do you get down to your final? Hey, here's the 6, 8, 10 kids that are coming in this year.
Well, Stanford's a unique situation, and I don't know how deep I want to get into this, but Stanford is a very unique situation from an academic standpoint. I think just like most coaches in the country, look at the top lists, and we do the best that we can to get in contact with someone at the high school and inquire about contact information. Most coaches probably just look at contact information for the student athlete and getting in contact with them. At Stanford and a few other higher end academic schools, the first thing that we need to know is, what's their GPA look like? Have they taken test scores? What do the test scores look like? What's their class ranking? And that list of 50 can dwindle down to 5 very, very quickly. So advice to high schoolers, challenge yourself every single year. Freshman year all the way to senior year. Don't think, I'm going to save my APs for senior year. No, build up your every single day you go to school is an opportunity to build your resume. Every single semester is an opportunity to build your resume and give you more options, okay? Too many times there's a mistake of, college, my access to college is going to come via athletics. Sometimes athletics help, but your academics can shut the door really quickly to a lot of different places. So if you want more options, challenge yourself every single semester. Don't think, it'd be better if I got an A in this regular level class. No. Challenge yourself. Get into that honors class. Get into that AP class and prep yourself for the next level. And don't just look at it as, I need to get this GPA, but you're prepping yourself for the next stage in life. There is such a thing as intellectual stimulation. There's that old adage of, when am I going to use geometry or algebra in life? Well, it's not just about using algebra or trigonometry or calculus in life. It's intellectual stimulation and practicing the ability to think and make decisions. There is such a thing as exercising the brain, and that plays a big part in just your personal growth and development. Okay, that doesn't make you a nerd. That doesn't make you a brainiac. That just makes you a person that's trying to refine yourself. Okay? That sounded really Stanford-y, didn't it?
No, man, you got me all fired up. Where do I stand the dotted line, Coach? No, man, I don't think high school cash really cut it. So, but I think that's amazing because you touched on a lot of things that you're right. I mean, how many times? I'm sure you, like you said, you heard a million times, and we hear it from other coaches and kids of I'm going to do this. I can run this, and I'm going to go there. But like you said, the reality is, hey, you are a student first, and if you haven't shown that you're willing to challenge yourself, you don't have that door will shut on you, and that's a tough reality for a lot of 16, 18-year-olds to face and swallow that pill. So I'm glad you touched on that. Thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow. It is, And I have gotten the question before of, okay, so what's the athlete standard to get into school? And I'm like, I just told you. wait, so Coach, what's the athlete standard to get in? Again, I just told you.
Right.
Yikes.
Right. So, how does it feel, or does it feel like you get to pick from a bigger pool now that you're, moving up through the ranks up to Stanford? Is the shooting getting easier for you?
I'll be honest, it's getting easier. It's getting easier to get in the door. It's just a matter of getting them in the door because Stanford is what it is as an academic entity. But, it's definitely a brand. And even when I was at Boston University, the brand was building over time. I was getting, whether it was inquiries or I was getting in the door with prospects that otherwise wouldn't even consider returning a questionnaire in the first few years that I got there. So it's just a matter of, for me, I'd like to think building your own brand as a coach and institution over a period of time. It's like at Boston University, I kind of had a 10-year plan in my head of the first 4 to 5 years, let's max out the people within our program and the people that we're getting in the program in the first initial years and really say, hey, look at the development of this program. And then kind of like an initial stage 2 is, all right, we've demonstrated that this is the level that we can get to. Let's try and take the next step. So I had a great young athlete, R.J. Page at Boston University that I inherited when I got there. He was a very good sprinter out of New Jersey, a 10.6, 10.7 kid, 21.5, 48.7 kid. And over time, we got down to 10.50, anchor leg on our 4x1. We got down to 20.9, I believe. He split 46.7 for us on the relay. And when he graduated after his 5th year, I brought in a young man that was a AAU Club National Champion in the 200 that had run 21.2. That was like one of the best kids out of Texas. That shows us over a lot of prominent Texas schools because of the brand that we had built up at Boston University of being a high-level academic school that can get it done on the track. So, you know, initially the brand can get you in the door, but it also you have to take the next step yourself personally as a coach to say, hey, this is a good situation to be in. But I will say, even in my first initial years at Boston University, on a funny note, you know, it's BU, I'd say, because it's known as BU for almost the country outside of Texas. And I'd be on the phone in the initial phone call, and I'd have the mom on the phone, and I'd have a good talk with the mom, and I'd, you know, say, is Susie there? And she's like, yeah, Coach, yeah. Hey, Susie, Boston College. It's Boston College on the phone. I'm like, ma'am, it's not Boston. It's Boston University. Ma'am, never mind. Just put Susie on the phone. Just put it. If I had a nickel every time that happened, I'd probably have 85 cents.
That's great. So, Coach, you know, you talked about, you know, obviously there's three generations of pioneer guys. I'm a little bit older, so like my time in high school was in the early 90s, mid 90s. So I got a couple of years on you guys. But you know, times was considered top. Like when I was, you know, a student athlete, when you were a student athlete, when Takashi and Burrell, I mean, we look at those times and what we thought was elite. Really, you know, the times nowadays are blowing these old ones out of the water. So, like, what do you attribute to this? And, like, you know, the evolution of training, and obviously you got a great feel for this. So, what do you think is the big difference here?
All right, I've had this conversation many times with a lot of my colleagues, and you know, it's very easy to say, oh, the kids are just evolving. You know, the kids are just evolving. They're getting better, and you know, so and so. And evolution doesn't work that way in that short a time span. That's just not how it works. So I'll say this: a lot of the overall training concepts, like at the higher levels of like, you know, the Boo Schexniders, the Dan Pavs, the John Smiths, the Brooks Johnsons, the Vince Andersons, Shavers of the world, Mike Holloways. This is what I truly believe. I believe in this age of social media and the digital age, it's very simply that information is so much more accessible, number one. Number two, the dialogue. So, for instance, we're having a podcast that could potentially be reached to thousands of people that never would have happened, you know, up to 10 years ago. You know, so a lot of people are getting information from, I'd like to think, me or us in this podcast that otherwise they wouldn't have access to 10 years ago. So I think just information is much more readily accessible. I think the dialogue channels have just you know, blown up as far as dialogue between coaches from the higher levels to the lower levels. And I don't just mean skill set. I mean just like from the professional collegiate levels to, you know, the high school, junior high levels. And I think number two, even more importantly, the evolution of coaching education has just skyrocketed over the past 10 years, specifically 5 to 10 years, and evolved. You know, it started with the USATF coaching schools here at the States. You know, I took my first level 1 in 2003, 4, or 5, however long ago that was. I took my first level 2 USATF in 2008, which was phenomenal. And now it's evolved and that was only offered, you know, once a year. And there were X amount of level 1s. Now it's evolved to an even greater extent to the USCCA coaching academy, you know, that's run by Boo Schexnider now, which is phenomenal. The information has evolved from the USATF Coaches Education Program. It's more readily available. You have also programs like Complete Track and Field, which I think does a phenomenal job of being accessible to high school coaches and trying to bring that information to the high school level. So really, I just think that just the education and the availability of that education of coaching of physiology, of biomechanics is just so much more readily available. And now you're getting that information to athletes that otherwise maybe wouldn't be exposed to that type of training. You know, I think that's a big reason for it. I did this little analysis. Earlier this summer because I was in a coaching group that we were talking about this, about, you know, why is the U.S. getting worse in the 400 as far as, you know, the high levels, because we don't have as many guys running 43 and the low 44s and XYZ, which I think is not true. So I couldn't help but I looked at the NCAA level, and I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I want to say between now and even 5 years ago, I think the number of sub-45 free runners was probably maybe 5 or 6 up to 5 years ago. Now that's increased to like 12 or 13. The number of sub-46 runners now is almost 1.5 times in the NCAA level that it was 5 years ago. And did you know this year in the NCAA, what would you think 46.99 would rank you in the NCAA? All three. What do you? 46.99. What do you think that would rank you in the NCAA this year?
Like top 30, right? 30th.
I don't think. I think it's further down a list than that.
You think 50?
I'll say it's top 75.
Okay. What about you, Ro?
46.99.
46.99 in the NCAA. Where does that rank you?
Man, I think I'm with Dave. You know, maybe top 50, top 75.
All right. Look me up on this because I could be off. If I remember correctly, 46.99 ranks you 107.
What?
This is right.
That's from again. You can't make regionals with 46.9.
46.99.
That's funny. 46.99 puts you on page 2. That's crazy.
Dude, you're like a footnote on page 2.
Yeah.
46.99. I wish I was lying, but shoot, let me get Teefers up here and see if I'm lying. Let me see how close I was. Let's see, outdoor list, NCAA combined. Let's see, men. Let's go top 200 on the men, event 400, search. All right, don't fail me, Teefers. Oh, I'm sorry, I was off. 104.
Oh, darn.
Hey, man, I almost touched the top 100. Watch out.
You're still on page 2.
46.99. That's so. Don't tell me that the event is getting worse when the base is getting wider. So,
right.
So that's not how that works. So again, to answer your, I think my big thing is, again, this information is just so much more accessible, and also with like the Coaches Academy is doing these symposiums at the council every year. So you're getting more coaches talking about their practices, talking about their philosophies. There's just so much more information sharing nowadays that it's going to spread and dwindle down to the athletes themselves, and they're just going to get better results. That $46.99, that guy is selling out with a pretty good training program. Up to 10 years ago, I guarantee that individual would probably be like a 47.6 guy. But, you know, there's probably a much better training program, better training setup, and he's $46.99.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is just mind-blowing, that $46.99. I hate to say this, but it doesn't get you squat. You're not getting anything when you're 104th in your discipline.
Yeah, and it's funny, in the same post when I made that, I said, you know, depending on the school that you're at, all you got to do is point to the list and say to that 47.5 kid that wants a full ride, be like, dude, you're not even at the meet.
Yeah.
So, Gabe, interesting. I jumped back to as far as I could on Teefers just now. In 2010, so 6 years ago, 46.99 gets you 78.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. That's wild.
So So Dave, again, to answer your question, I truly believe that it's the age of information, the age of interaction in social media, and just the coaching education has just gotten that much better and that much more widespread.
That's fantastic. No, those are great numbers. Just to, that's a great thing about our sport too. Is just got these concrete numbers to point to, and what you just said is perfect. I appreciate it.
Hey, Takashi, look up when Grandpa Dave ran and see when those 400s were like that.
The internet doesn't go that far back. I gotta go to the library. There's things that still exist that kids don't know about. I gotta go to the library. In the basement, that's where they have the stone tablets.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, guys.
I had to do it, Dave. I had to do it. You open the door and just walk right through it.
Hey, Gabe, you talked a little bit about the coaching education stuff, and I know this is where I've bumped into you a handful of times, particularly with the USDF CCCA, the national convention.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. You had a chance to be a key speaker in 2012 at the national clinic, and I was wondering if you could kind of touch base and reflect on how did it happen, the experience of it, and maybe looking back on it, what did you take away from it?
Oh man, that was that's so far in my career. That's got to be. I don't know what else would be in there. I can think of a couple, but that's got to be a top 5 experience in my career so far. It's just having the honor to be asked to speak at the convention and have the opportunity to do it and speak in front of my peers. That came about just actually as a result of a coaching education experience, believe it or not. I've come to know Boo as many of my friends and colleagues have. I consider Boo a friend and a long-range mentor in a lot of respects. There's so many others in the community do. And he did a technical certification course, I guess a USATF Level 1 equivalent course in Massachusetts, in the Boston area. And I'm like, hey, Boo's here. I got to go to it. So I went. It was a great experience, and he and I went out to dinner a couple nights, shared some time together, and I talked about, just wanting to be a part of the program and helping him out. And Boo's just like the most down-to-earth, even-keeled guy, and he essentially said to me, he said, I think I'm going to have you speak. I'm like, really? And I'm like, that would be cool. And he was like, I'll keep that in mind. And I'm just paraphrasing all this. And, a week or so later, if I remember correctly, he emails me and said, I'd like you to speak. You can talk about any topic you want in the sprint. And I got that email, I just could feel the blood leave my face. Like, holy crap. Like, Boo wants me to speak at the convention. And that was a really, really touching and honorable moment for me that someone of his stature would like me to speak in front of my peers. So I had to say yes, and I said yes without having any idea what I was going to talk about, because it was a very intimidating prospect. Like, you're basically revealing yourself to the entire coaching community. So my initial approach was, well, there's really one of two ways these things usually go, okay? The first one is you get up and you talk about, okay, this is what I do, all right? This is what I do, or this is how I train, in my case, quarter milers, or this is how I train the relay, or this is how I train sprinters, okay? And door number 2, it's, okay, talking about a training parameter. So this is acceleration, or this is anaerobic capacity, or this is how you do endurance, or whatever that template is, and power output. And for me, I thought to myself, well, who wants to hear about what I do? I copy most programs like most other people. I don't want to say copy, but, I get a lot of my inspiration from a lot of other programs anyway. And then I'm like, I'm not that guy to talk about Excel. So, it just hit me. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to reveal myself to the world. I'm going to talk about, let me step back for a second. After that, I thought to myself, how can I bring a topic forth that will really actually help someone, and help someone that's just like me? a young, up-and-coming coach that's still trying to find his or her way in this profession. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to talk about all the times that I screwed up and what I learned from it. And just put it out there. And it was a hit. I mean, I think the title was Growing as a Sprints Coach, Common Mistakes Along the Way and Their Value. And that was the idea, is mistakes that I know I've made that are overlying themes that people screw up on in their career, and, what you can learn from that situation. So for me, I got into talking about, to me, one of the most important pieces of being a better coach is how do you come to your own personal philosophy? How do you come to how you train athletes? And the mistake I feel a lot of young coaches make is carbon copying programs. That was my first one, okay? Carbon copying program, just like, all right, this is what Gabe Sanders at Stanford does. This is what Dennis Shavers at LSU does. This is what, Mike Holloway at Florida does. While those are good general programs, that might not fit what you're doing. So the reason I am against carbon copying programs right off the bat, whether it's from a mentor or whether it's from another successful program, is two reasons. I call it the 2 C's, is context and concepts. Okay, so the first one is concepts, all right? It doesn't matter how successful a particular program is, whether it's at a certain high school, whether it's at a certain collegiate program. If there is not a fundamental understanding of underlying concepts in training theory, specifically how energy systems work, specifically how acceleration works, maximum velocity, power output, general physiology, general biomechanics. If you don't have that understanding and how it ebbs and flows person to person, you will not succeed with that program at the end of the day. Maybe short-term success, but long-term, no. And number two, if and when you have an underlying understanding, a general understanding of these, how can you manipulate those concepts into the context of your program? All right? So one way to illustrate that in my my symposium was I took a picture of our indoor facility at Boston University at the time, one of the best facilities in the country, fastest indoor track in the country, banked. We can get in there, 365 days out of the year. And I said, I, for the most part, can do whatever I need to do on the track. And then I said, this is my context. And then I flashed a picture of a high school hallway. And I said, I know we have high school coaches in there. Raise your hand if in the wintertime this is your situation. I had a bunch of guys raise their hands. And I said, raise your hand if you're in this hallway and you're able to do repeat 150s in the hallway. And they all put their hand down. So, I said, you have to figure out how can you manipulate these concepts in the context of your situation. And that's why carbon copying programs don't work. You can copy themes from them, but, tit for tat, you're not going to be successful. So, for instance, like I just said, if a workout calls for a speed endurance workout of 80, 100, 120, and your hallway is only 50 meters long, do repeat 30s. Do 8 times 30 with short recovery and stack it. You're going to get close to the same parameter that you would doing that longer speed endurance run. Fit it to your situation. If you're in a high school hallway and that's all you have, you might not want to do a ton of tempo endurance because you're going to pound the legs, the shins, the knees, the joints. Maybe rely a little bit more on general strength circuits. So that's just a few general ideas of understanding, hey, I can get the same, close to the same type of energy system demand that I can with tempo runs, and maybe I can get some more strength work with general strength versus doing, 3,000 meters of tempo in this concrete hallway, and now the kid's knees and ankles are just busted for the next week and a half. I talked about having an understanding of how to read mechanics, how to communicate with athletes, and again, each time I had an anecdote to my own personal experience of when I did not understand this at the time, what the screw-up was, and what I learned from it, okay? And it was very well received. It was, I had a lot of young coaches, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or stroke my own ego, but I had a lot of young people just come up to me, shake my hand, and say, thank you for that. I needed to hear that. That, hey, it's okay if you screw up. It's okay if you don't understand something. That's okay. This is part of a process of learning. And a lot of people said, hey, I'm in the middle of this right now. I couldn't figure it out. Thanks for pointing this out about what I'm doing. And I think my goal was hit, is, just helping out the younger generation of, steering them on the right path.
Mm-hmm. A lot of, it's funny because when you share that, there's two things that went through it. One is, that's incredible because, like, you're openly sharing and revealing, like, these, I don't want to say, like, flaws, but, like, these errors, whether it's in
you can call them flaws. You can call them flaws or errors in judgment, but, like, that's what they were.
Right. And then, like, and we all have them. We've all done it. Like, I immediately started thinking about, first couple of years of coaching, as an assistant coach, the first couple of years of coaching as a head coach, and the decisions I made in myself. And I'm like, looking back on it, I just laugh at, like, I was an idiot, man. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
It's like you said, you try to spit, like, way too often. You try to spit a square peg in a round hole, and you see it. And I thought it was kind of neat because it's like, I heard it in the Steve Magnus and John Marcus' podcast not that long ago. They were talking about this kind of, like you're talking about, with the concepts and context of what you have. So, like you said, you're looking for a hill. You don't have a hill. You got to go mimic this somehow. So, it's like, it's forcing you to be very innovative based on what you have. If your hallway is 112 meters, then maybe you're working with that in the confines of 112 meters straight away.
Yeah.
Or whatever it may be. So I love it. I love they're good at that, man. I got to do a little bit of self-reflection there myself.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do things differently. That's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, in the second to last year of my time at Boston University, I had a big screw up when I screwed up on, the density of application. I got too pigeonholed into looking at single sessions versus looking at the overall, body of work, and I got a couple of kids banged up, but I learned from that, and I just took that opportunity. It's never good when people get hurt or anything like that, or something bad happens, but you have to look at what's the best thing I can get out of this, and I know I'm never going to make that mistake again. So that's what we need to know, that, hey, historically, and I think you hear this about teaching and, coaching, like, historically, and I think I said this in my symposium, historically, mistakes are good. Mistakes are good in long-term growth, both for the coach and the athlete. One of the best things a great athlete can have is a poorly executed race, at least early in the year or early in their career. That's one of the best things that can ever happen to them. You know why? Because you can look back and see what happened in that bad race, or what happened leading up to that bad race, and make the adjustments for the future. Because nobody's ever going to bat 1,000. Nobody. I don't care how good you are. World record holders, they have lost. They've lost early in their career. They've lost late in their career. They don't always win. I mean, Edwin Moses lost at one point, and at one point, Edwin Moses, his streak started at one point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You just touched on a little bit earlier about the advancements in training and just the access and information. Because everybody has that, you see the time dropping, and that was proven in the stats. And so now we have a lot more talented competition, but still the same amount of limited spots. How are athletes, these days making a living in the sport who aren't the big name people, the Alex and Felix types?
It's tough. I hate to say it, but from the outside looking in, looking at a lot of news reports and reports from athletes themselves, it's getting harder as in the professional track world if you're not a Usain Bolt or an Allison Felix or maybe an Ashton Eaton of the world. An article was recently published in Track Stats, I believe, that examined the income of Diamond League competitors. You've got some of the best athletes in the world in their respective events that, if you take out potentially what they're earning as a base salary in their contract, they're earning less than six figures. You've got Olympic medalists that are earning $50,000, $60,000 off of meet winnings. Okay, that's not fixed salary or income.
Right.
That's off of, I have to bust my butt and cross the line to get that money. You know, and there are certain events that just aren't as conducive to, you know, making a living, like, for instance, the hammer throw or the high jump or the triple jump or one of the off events like the 800, for instance, if you're not a David Rudisha or Nick Simmons.
Yeah.
So it's a grind of love, and it's also a grind of, you know, what is your, you know, for some people it can become their side hustle is training, and, you know, having a job, having an actual real job that will enable you to train, or getting in a good situation that will allow you to have a little bit of scholarship to train. I think Altus has a wonderful program if you can hit certain parameters that will, you know, give you partial scholarships or full scholarships to train at their facility, in their world-class facility. You know, being a college coach, I can only speak on it so much because I'm not in the professional ranks. But I think nowadays, in this day and age of professional track and field and the direction that it's heading, you need to have a plan just in life outside of track and field. I hate to say that, but I think that's the reality of what we're looking at nowadays. Is, you know, have that Olympic dream. Like, I have every intention to coach an Olympic athlete and one day an Olympic medalist. That's what like my dream goal is. But you must have an idea of what's going to happen after that gold medal. Okay, what are you going to do after that gold medal, even if it has nothing to do with track? Are you going to go into business? Are you going to go into finance? Are you going to go into the general workforce? Are you going to be a teacher? You know, what do you want to do in life after, best case scenario for an athlete, age 30 to 32? Okay, that's long in this sport. You know, taking out the outliers of the Justin Gatlins and the Allison Felixes and, you know, the Kim Collins, who is a mega outlier at age 56, I think.
Right.
or however old he is. Again, maybe it's the Stanford in me talking, but, you know, you got to have an idea of who you want to be outside of the track, you know, to a large extent. You got to have that vision. You know, I could go on a whole other tangent of you know, how does this sport become more professional, so you don't have to necessarily have, so you do have that option, or that something to look forward to besides an Olympic medal every 4 years.
Right.
You know, like why can't track and field, you know, I'm probably about to go on a tangent, but why can't track and field, you know, take the example of the other four major professional sports that have been there for decades? Why can't we follow the professional model of the NBA that has an NBA Finals every year? Major League Baseball has a World Series every year. The NFL has a Super Bowl every year. Hockey has a Stanley Cup every year. What do we have? The Olympics every 4 years.
Right.
We have the World Championships every 2 to 3 years. And then we have off years? Like, what? Do we, like what? We don't have a championship every single year?
Right.
And we're trying to figure out why we can't be mainstream. I mean, we're doing this to ourselves. We're 100% doing this to ourselves. I'm sorry. Like, again, maybe it's just I'm a crazy coach, but it seems to me this sport has no interest in surviving and being professional. I'm sorry. You know, the model that the Olympic model is not healthy for the long-term health of the sport. Again, keep the Olympics, do it. The NBA, like, they participate in the Olympics. Hockey, they participate in the Olympics. But they also have the Stanley Cup every single year. Why can't we have something like that? And all it takes is, again, follow the model of the professional sports. We need to find a few billionaires somewhere that will say, hey, we're gonna pool this money, or we're gonna get subsidies like all the other league owners, and we're gonna use these arenas, and these are gonna be our venues. Like, again, the model is there, but we choose to turn a blind eye and say, no, that's not how we do business here. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, I think the future is indoor track and field. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think the future is indoor track and field. You know why? Because it's an arena sport, and I think it's going to be tough on a weekly basis to get 50,000 people to a track meet, at least initially. But you can get 3,000 to 5,000 people excited on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to go to an indoor venue that is tightly packed, that is exciting, that you can have like little mini fireworks, little mini flame display. You can have screen boards. You can have announcers. You can have a lot of more fan interaction on an indoor facility, cut down the number of events that are a little more exciting. You know, a pole vault, the pole vault in an indoor facility is exhilarating. Okay, the high jump in an indoor facility is exhilarating. The long jump, triple jump in an indoor facility is exhilarating. To actually have that true close feel. You know, the rush of a 4-minute mile on an indoor track is exhilarating. And why can't we capture that on a yearly basis between the months of January to March? You know, why can't we do that? You know, why can't we be excited about the upcoming track league draft, like the real draft, not what they did up in Oregon? You know, why can't we look forward to someone being the number one pick going to the Chicago Striders as the best available person, or the Chicago Striders have a weakness in the short sprint, so they need to get a 60-meter dasher? You know, like, why can't we somehow monetize this and not be reliant on shoe companies? You know, the shoe companies are reliant on the athletes and the leagues. It shouldn't be the other way around. But, you know, that's just my little tangent there.
No,
Again,
I love
I love the Olympics. I love the Olympics. That is my dream, to coach in the Olympics. But I just want our sport to be better and to survive and thrive.
I think you touched a lot on the indoor concept, because you saw with the World Championship indoors, you know, like how, like you talk about exhilarating, like holy crap, that was awesome to watch that on TV. And then you talk about like I thought Portland was on something with like the series of mini meets they had going on. Yeah. And then I think like in the UK they had a concept like that too. I think it was the one in the UK where they actually had a tent that went over the backstretch on the track, like a friggin' tent that went 50 meters, and if you paid the extra $30 or whatever, it's like a beer garden in there, and you're in there face to face cheering and screaming on the runners as they're running through the tent. Like, it's nuts, you know. But like you said, it's that I don't think a lot of people realize up close what actually, you know, how amazing some of these track and field athletes are and what they can do. Because when you don't have a really good perspective of it, when the camera is, you're right at the top of the Olympic Stadium, zooming in 75 meters away, there's no concept in relation. Yeah. Right.
I mean, one of the coolest moments for me at Boston University years ago is when the Oregon Project came in the first year, and Galen Rupp ran that 350 mile, and it was set up as an unofficial record attempt. You know, between an hour leading up to that race, we had, I think, 300-400 people walk into the building that had heard about it, and we were, including all the fans that were already there for the meet, you know, we were at capacity. I mean, if the fire marshal walked in, he would have shut us down. And and I announced that race. That's another one of the cool moments of my career is announcing that race. You know, calling out the splits, getting the crowd hyped. Every single person was on their feet for that race, and it was deafening, the amount of noise in there. Absolutely deafening. And Rupp, in an interview himself, you can look this up on FlowTrack, said the only thing that was louder than that was the London 2012 Olympics in that race. He said it was amazing, and he ran 350. Like, that, to me, that's the atmosphere that we should be going for on a weekly basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be sweet, man. And like you said, Takashi, a lot of it's just, you know, people don't have perspective on just how talented these people are. And if we can find a way to connect that to the people, then there'd be a heck of a lot more excitement for the sport, you know.
Yeah. It was, you know, I kind of look back and look at our previous at Skyline High School, our throws coach. You know, he was I think it wasn't like a 71-foot shot putter in high school. Like, he was an elite of the elite, you know, coming out. And I was telling the kid that, and they're like, "Wow, that sounds really far." Like, I know it's really far, but kids on the team throw like 30. You know, so, and then we went at the football field, or we were at the track, and we got the practice trip on the infield. Then we walked out 71 feet, and he looks back, and he's like, "Holy crap!" Like, that is, he threw what? You know, so
he threw a 16-pound ball. What? You know?
Yeah. Really? There's so much. You're right. There's so much more better our sport can absolutely do. And at all the levels, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you said, a 350 mile is impressive. You don't have to be a track nut to get that. Like, he ran a mile in 3 minutes and 50 seconds. He did what? You know?
Indoors.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on top of it. If you're on top of it, oof, man.
I mean, we saw a little bit of that over here on a smaller scale. You know, a couple of years back, we had Nick Willis running that race over at Saline High School.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that was great. That was the most packed I'd ever seen in that stadium. It was exciting. You know, they had a Saline kid be the rabbit for the first lap so they could bring him through the quarter. I mean, it was just fun. And stuff like that needs to happen more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. We could go on tangents on that.
They could just keep on going, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's also like, hey, this is why we do these podcasts too, you know. We want to, it's just another medium for information and sharing concepts. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you, Gabe. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you spending a lot of time with us. And I know you said you got your first team meeting coming up, so we don't want to make you late for sure. But can't say enough of how thankful we are for this one.
Hey, thank you guys. Hey, bring me back anytime, man. Anytime. I love talking shop. I love the sport. I love talking to guys like you. I love reminiscing about the old days at Pi High. And I just like you guys. I want to be better every day, and I want the sport to be better every day. So, yeah, anytime.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you much, Gabe.